we'll be FaceTime or something or talking on the phone. I'll grab that kid and just keep rubbing that ring in his face.
Work ethic's obviously very important as well.
When it's all said and done, I want 5 quarterbacks.
Recruiting, most important part of the game.
Do you want me to call you Mike or Magic? Because, there's the whole Magic. Yeah, I don't want to go there.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of This, That, and the Other. I see Daryl, also known as Jay Hunters, has made the trip in, and we're joined today by Sean S. Cottrell, 23. How you guys doing?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
Doing well. Sean, are you with us?
Yep, I'm here. Doing good.
All right, great. Now, I do believe that Shannon Holdaway is supposed to be on his way in as well. So we'll keep our fingers crossed that he makes it into the show tonight. So, Sean, you're, I guess, the relative newbie in the bunch. And I know this was going to be an episode where we got a chance to visit with both a vet in Holdaway and also hear some of your thoughts from a newbie aspect, some of your difficulties in the game as far as being able to actually play the game to the level that you want to play. And there's Sean. Look at Shannon. And I guarantee you that SOB is in his man cave. His Virginia Tech man cave. We can't hear you. You're going to have to turn that mic up. Still no audio from him. Still nothing from you there, Shannon. While Shannon's working that out, we're going to go ahead and let you go ahead and deal with that one, Sean. Some of the new hurdles or newbie hurdles that you've encountered that maybe you didn't anticipate encountering.
Yeah, there's been quite a few of them for sure. I joined just really recently, back in I think March or April, and I had never heard of GridIron Dynasty before. Randomly going on a run one day, and somebody had mentioned Hoops Dynasty on a podcast I was listening to, so I looked it up and found GridIron, and I've been hooked ever since. And 3 months later, I've got about 7 teams too many probably, and made quite a few mistakes. I think there's the cool thing I'm learning kind of as I go is that there's just an unending number of lessons you can learn. Mm-hmm. And you can't learn them all at once. You got to learn them one at a time, one mistake at a time. And so it's been interesting, from recruiting to game planning, the whole gamut. It's been fun. So
now, when you moved from Division III into Division II, did you feel a sense of being overwhelmed by the different aspects of the game at that level, or were you relieved that you were able to manipulate your team to meet your needs a little bit more?
I'd say a bit of both. I think when you're in D3, everyone always says get to D2, and so I was excited to get there. I knew that I wanted more control than I had, but my first experience in D2 was in an all-human conference in Wilkinson. So it's been that was a struggle. That was an adjustment. And I'm probably maybe a season behind some of my conference mates, just because I was feeling my way around in the first recruiting class. But I definitely now, if I move into a new world, I just took over a team in Dobie this season, and I'm struggling with D3 just because there's things I'm thinking about in recruiting, like I could use this tight end here and limit his playing time, that you just can't do actually when you're in D3. So now I'm finding myself, I don't want to say frustrated, because there's good things about D3 too, but I'm definitely more in the realm of wanting to have more control. So
what can you tell him about that, Daryl? He's gotten his initial foray into having more control of the team. He's finding some things easier than he expected, some things a little more difficult. What kind of advice can you give him as he, takes his expertise all the way up to the elite status?
So I wouldn't know. I'm not elite, so no. I wish I had like I said, I went back and thought I was good at certain areas, and now I'm to the point where I'm questioning myself. I always thought recruiting was my strong suit, and game planning was not my strong suit, and that's where I thought I lacked and stuff. But to be honest with you, this Wilkinson deal that's going on has kind of showed me just the opposite. I think I'm having a better shot at actually game planning than, if I had the recruits, I think I could probably hold a little bit better. But so yeah, once you've moved up to D2, like I said, I can see his frustrations for D3 is, you get used to being able to, have more control and everything, and then if you go back to D3, it's all taken away from you again. So it would definitely get frustrating. To me, in my opinion, D2 is probably the easiest recruiting there is, and I don't mean that in a harsh way or anything, but you don't have D3 coming up and stealing your guys, and you don't have D1 AA guys. Usually I won't say there aren't. I actually in one of my D2 teams this year, Wyoming was on a couple of my recruits. And I'm like, a 1A school down on a D2 player. And I'm like, okay. So you never know. But yeah, to me, D2 is probably the purest recruiting as far as, not having Division III to worry about or, 1 AA to worry about. You're pretty much set, with D2 and who you're against, and so I think it's the easiest, and I think 1 AA is the hardest because you got to find that perfect line between you and 1A, and that changes dramatically with teams around you and everything else. But that's what I like, I guess, to an extent. Like I said, my Wilkinson project is a little excruciating at times. I've never coached at Florida or in Florida, so it's a new one on me because I think almost every school's full, and you're all on a little bitty island down here, and
pretty much
crammed together. And even if you decide that you're going to try and go further away, you're all going in the same direction.
Exactly.
Where else, there's no 360. It's all, and that's it. So it's different. I haven't quite got the handle on it yet, but.
So can I ask a question to that, Darryl?
No. Sure.
So you're talking about D2 recruiting, and I know you have the Texas A&M Kingsville team in Wilkinson.
Yep.
But when I look, so my vision's not great, right? So when I look at 1 AA, I see, you see the top 1 AA recruits, and then if you kind of scroll down a little bit, that's when the Kingsville and Long Island, you start seeing those names. I guess I'm surprised that some of the bottom D1 AA guys don't jump on those recruits. Is there is there just a lot of them, or do you know the reason for that?
Yeah, I mean, it's really there's a bigger line in between them. If a 1 AA guy is coming down on a D2 guy, then it's either a guy that just moved up or doesn't really know what he's doing, in my opinion, because you can go out and find undecideds, all day long that are better than anybody that a D2 guy is on. Like I said, usually if I see a 1 AA guy down on a D2 guy, then he's either really hurting with no money or he just, like I said, he's a newbie and not quite sure. Like I said, there's Wyoming, who's a D1A school, was on a D2 player. And I'm like, there's no way in the world that should ever happen. So, I look at it and I'm like, this guy, I kind of just for, shits and giggles, I look to see who he was and what kind of coaching experience. And he's hasn't been doing it that long or wasn't that good. So, yeah, I mean, if you see a 1 AA guy down there, then chances are he just, he's still either thinking that that's good for 1AA as well, because that might be some of the problem if people are looking in the forums and they see, they read the thing about the cores, and it actually gives cores for like Division III, and they still have it in their mind that, that's good for, everything, and it's not. So yeah, I mean, you have to adjust as you move up. But yeah, I mean, your vision will get better, and like I said, if I don't think you'll really have any problems. I was going to say I didn't see 1AA school on any player that I was going after with Kingsville, so you'll be all right. There's plenty of them around there once you get your vision up, and the thing is if it's in a more of a barren world where there ain't a whole lot of coaches, you'll have no problems at all, because basically what they do is they'll go out as far as they can go, and they're searching for the best players, the very high potential guys, and a lot of times they won't even battle you too much unless it's just a complete stud in their backyard or something of that nature. But there's so many to go around that I don't even think you have to battle near as much in Division II.
And I was looking too at some of the some of the D1A locations, and there's a big void right through the middle of the U.S. Going from Texas to Oklahoma, Kansas, Nebraska, South Dakota, North Dakota, and then coming back down through Wyoming, Colorado, and into New Mexico. There are no D1A schools outside of the ones that are in the lower part of Texas, D1AA schools, I should say. Yeah. So when you've got a school that is close by, let's say in Iowa, or even in the outreaches of Utah or Idaho, those D1AA schools, depending on their situation with money and the available talent in their area, they may be reaching down to the D2 level just because there's nobody in their immediate area and they don't have the funds to go beyond their immediate area. So, that's a case where you would see a Drake or somebody going into Colorado and messing with some of the Colorado mines or Fort Lewis or whatever have the schools there. And, you don't see that much in Florida. You're at Bethune-Cookman in Wilkerson, I believe. And, you've got the D1s right there. But as far as a D2 coming down, it's going to be Valdosta. If they're coming down there, because like you said, Florida is pretty much a stovepipe when it comes to recruiting. You don't go anywhere but up when you're in the southern part of Florida. So it's not so much that the quality between D2 upper side and the D1AA lower side is so similar, and it's such a broad stroke and availability. I think it's more of opportunity for that D1AA coach who has lost battles, is out of money, and is pretty desperate. But like Daryl said, there's going to be undecideds at D1AA. But again, some of those undecideds may cost quite a bit simply because they're, 700, 800, 900 miles away versus I don't want to say similar, but close recruit that could be a little bit closer. And, the coach has to decide, is it worth the battle to battle a D2, or is it worth, giving up a whole bunch of money in that battle, or spending a little bit less to go great distance. But then again, that guy's not guaranteed to sign with you or favor you, with a scout. You may be spending more money on that guy that's further away, but he's a D1AA, because it's going to take 3, 4, or 5 campus visits to get him green to you. And that money, you could have probably knocked off the D2 school off of a closer recruit that may or may not be quality. So there's a variety of ways that goes, Sean, as far as how those guys interact. And we do have Shannon here, but do we have Shannon with audio? Can anybody hear Shannon? I can't hear him. Can y'all?
I can hear him now.
I know you can't. You cannot hear him.
I might believe that. I had to go. I went through 3 devices to get here. So there you go.
Goodness gracious. And if y'all don't know, Shannon's my homeboy from Virginia. We've got some similar grounds that we've covered independently. Didn't know each other until we started the podcast, and
That's correct.
he's got the man cave that I'm going to start flying to for every Thursday night's this, that, and the other show. We're going to host it right there. Free beer, peanuts, and chips, all that good stuff.
Sounds great. Let's do it. Come on.
Yeah. He's got an airplane that he's willing to fly me around in, right?
I hope.
Oh, you didn't get that memo?
Checkbook to pay for all this, Magic. That's what I'm hoping.
He didn't get the memo. Well, Shannon, we really haven't gotten too deep into anything other than talking about some of the pitfalls of being a newbie in this game and the shock and awe sometimes of moving up from D3 into D2. What about your experience? I know you've been around for a while, so I don't think the game had evolved to the point it is now when you were able to move up from D3 to D2. Were you? Was it?
No, when I first started, they hadn't even opened up all the worlds. So I happened to move up to D2 in one world that was already in existence, but then they opened up a world, and of course it was a mad dash to D1. And I had decided I was going to make that mad dash as well. And I made the mad dash to Virginia Tech and got there and was there for 8 or 10 seasons and decided it wasn't for me. You know, as we've talked about before, I think there's a lot of different games within the game. And for me, D3 and D2 are just a lot more enjoyable.
Yeah, definitely. And, you know, Sean is the relative newbie. He is the newbie for the purpose of this show, and he's picking brains. Is there anything you want to throw to Shannon's way there, Sean?
No, I guess in D3, I know you've been kind of holding it down with a lot of the Menlo teams. I've seen you on a couple other teams. Maybe I think you're in Austin in one of them. What's any specific reason why you take the Menlo teams when you can get them? Is there you like the recruiting out in California or what?
I know this story.
Well, of course, you guys. Mike was on the show not long ago, and when I came back years ago, I had Emory and Henry, which is very, very close to where I live. And my intent had been to grab Emory and Henry when I came back, but unfortunately, Bug Eaters had it in the first world I was going to sign up in. So I got to looking around, and years ago, I'd played against a Canes for Life who no longer plays, but he was always in Menlo. So Menlo just happened to be available in Bryant, and I jumped into it just thinking I would tread water. And then I got out there and I learned what Mike was doing at St. Olaf, and I just decided, well, I'm just going to collect Menlos because he collects St. Olaf's, and I started collecting Menlos. And I had never been in Texas except at D1AA. So that kind of got me to Austin while I was treading water, waiting for a Menlo. And so I've just kind of hung around in a couple of worlds at Austin. But really, I don't have any ties at all to California. I'm completely on the other coast. As I said on one of the earlier shows, we actually went out to California a couple years ago, my son and I. My son plays Hoops Dynasty, and he plays Menlo in Hoops Dynasty. And so we actually went to the campus and had our picture taken in front of the sign and all those kind of things. But in real life, Menlo doesn't actually have a football team. So it's kind of ironic.
You know, it's funny. I moved up to Ferris State in Wilkinson D2, and I guess I've been talking about it a lot because my kids got me a Ferris State T-shirt for Father's Day this year. So
There you go.
There you go. That was talking.
When I was coaching OBU, I guess in a couple worlds, Ouachita Baptist, my daughter got me a Ouachita Baptist shirt. It had nothing to do with the fact that her mom and I were sending tuition to that school for her to attend. Nothing at all.
One of the places when I first started, a guy that mentored me when I first started, he was at Gustavus Adolphus. Is that it?
Oh,
Is that
yeah.
what you want to say? So that was one of the schools when I way back, 20 years ago when I first started. That's one of the schools I originally played at, but I actually hated that location. And I'm gonna tell you, it's kind of brutal up there in the Northeast if you get into a really populated world. In the old days, Bryant was the Wilkinson. It was heavily populated, and recruiting was cutthroat in the Northeast. I mean, it was cutthroat. Even in Emory and Henry, it was cutthroat. So, this obviously, if you're a newbie, recruiting is the biggest hurdle to clear. You got to get through and learn how to recruit and be successful, because I don't think most people that have been around for a while would disagree that if you don't have talent at any level, it's going to be very, very hard to coach your way to wins. It's just going to be hard.
Yeah. And as far as the recruiting aspect goes, a lot of coaches, and I'm guilty, especially moving from D3 to D2, you're getting away from that $3,000 per scholarship to doubling it to $6,000 per scholarship. And you think back on your D3 experience and you realize, if I'd just had another $1,000 or another $2,000, I could have got this guy. And that tends to lead you into a false sense of security at D2, because now you have that type of money. But not only does it take more to land those recruits, but the other coaches also have that money. And for some reason, you don't want to admit that to yourself, and you blow all your money and you're like, how did this happen? I've got 0 signees. I've got 0 money. What did I do wrong? I've been there and I've done it. Daryl, on the other hand, he signs all his class in the first cycle, so he wouldn't know anything about that.
I did actually, just didn't know though.
I don't lie.
I had a huge chunk of change left, and I was like, well, do I spend it, or because I only had eight, but everybody I had was very high potential or high potential. There was 2 average DBs that I took. But I went shopping with, like I said, I had plenty of money. I went shopping to look, and the rest of them that were better were average. So I'm like, I'll just stick with what I got, because they got good work ethic and they're average. So I'll just build them up, and then I'll just save this for a rainy day. And, I usually don't do that. I'm giving away my little secret here, but I usually don't. I usually, once I've got my greens that I'm set and I don't think anybody's going to jump me or anything, I go shopping. So,
you recruit like my brother-in-law fishes. He just keeps culling for the bigger fish.
Yeah.
Kevin does that all day long. I'm out there catching my minimum, and I'm thankful.
I'm just trying to catch something.
We're just getting started.
Just trying to catch something. Yeah,
exactly.
Sometimes it doesn't.
Let's go ahead and get to the board right quick. Go ahead.
There's nothing like having that money left over, and then you go looking for somebody better, and there's nobody out there, and it's just like, really, the one year that I have 12,000 laying around.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Or you're not getting into the battles you anticipated, and that's why you have that money, and you're like, why this year? Why when I'm loaded? Why when I've got a class of 23 to sign and I've got $100,000 sitting here with nothing to do, and you're going to lose 75% of that, and that makes you sick. So, and then the following year,
I had something happen to me this week, and I won't say which world because it may still be going on. But Mike
Myers,
Mike Myers, he's like the worst in the world for like grabbing the top 3 or 4 guys at every position.
Oh yeah.
So for some reason, he had missed one in one world. And I looked at it at the end of the first cycle, and I was like, wonder why he didn't get that one. And then at the end of the second cycle, nobody jumped on the guy. And I don't mean he was a little better. I mean he was like 4 points better than anybody else on the board. And we're in the third cycle of recruiting, and nobody's jumped on him. So, of course, he's 2,000 miles away. I hit him with a scout. He shows up as a very high potential. I almost browned my pants. Nobody's looking at him, right? So what do you do, Daryl? You throw the bank at him, right? Because everybody else has missed him.
Exactly.
Not the case. At that point, there were like 3 people on him. And I had blown, and this is D3. So I had blown like $4,000 on a guy that I'm never going to get. Because everybody else is closer than I was. So,
Yeah, that means just walk away.
Yeah, just walk away.
And that's another difficult thing is knowing when to stop. You know, we on last night's show, we were talking about in Wilkinson, South Florida, and Allen, 139, I think it is. He's the coach at the Bulls down at the USF. He had a class of 5. I had a class of, I don't know, 10 or 12, 14, somewhere in that area. And I'm Miami, an elite, with plenty of bowl money, plenty of carryover money. And there's a quarterback 6 miles from him. And I said last night he was 180 range from me, but he's actually 360 when I went back and looked. But it was still, you know, I'm an elite. He's going to have to really out-effort me to even get this recruit to talk to him. 58 or 59 accepted campus visits later, 10 or 12 home visits by the head coach, an accepted sophomore start, and he was like, "Nah, I don't even know you exist, coach." And he was the number 2 GD reports rated quarterback in D1A, very high, sky's the limit, great work ethic. And I was yellow, but I was in other battles, and I just knew that it was just a matter of time. But, you know, looking back, there are clues when you realize and you do the math, and I did the math looking at his previous season and where his players signed from, and then looking back in my archive to see if they started off as an undecided or a sim, triple sim or whatever, and quite a few were. So I know that he didn't have a lot of carryover money and not a whole lot of bowl money. So with his 100 to 110,000 coming into this recruiting season, you know, he was going to have to use every bit of that, if not more, to equate to what my effort would be at $89,000. And that's what I dropped on this guy, was $89,500, and he signed with the Bulls. Wow. So, you know, looking back, you realize, wait a minute, he's only got 5 scholarships.
Wow.
And he's dumping everything he can on this one recruit.
Do you think that this was something that was on the board the other day? Do you think that obviously effort matters? And when I mean effort, phone calls, etc. So the dollars add up. Obviously, there's a difference between head coach visit versus assistant coach visit, etc., etc.
Right.
But do you think timing is important? So let's say we're both recruiting the same player, all things equal, and you offer the freshman start before I do, even though I offer it next cycle. Do you think that's a tiebreaker?
I don't remember where it was, but I do recall a conversation, and I don't remember if it was in a Dev chat or on the message board, but timing is a factor. And you'll notice, and we've all seen it, and Sean, write this down, it's easier to knock Sims off of a school in the first cycle or two than it is later on in recruiting. That's because they get the familiarization going on. In other words, a recruit becomes familiar with these 3 sim schools because they've been on him since day one. And when you come into the picture, now all of a sudden it's like, well, I'll listen to you, but you know, these are my guys. You know, they've been on me since day one. So it's going to take you a whole lot to get me to even look at you. And the same is true, in my opinion. In your example, if I offer the freshman start and, you know, a cycle or 2 cycles later, you offer it. You know, to me, it's kind of telling that recruit, well, you didn't think I was good enough to start as soon as, you know, this other guy did. So how much of an advantage? I'm not sure that it's known, but I firmly believe that there is some type of advantage to doing that. And the same is true with getting guys to start accepting your visits. And you'll notice Sean, you'll notice this too. You'll send a lot of the campus visits or those visits that can be denied by a recruit, such as your assistant and your head coach home visits. If they are denying those, they may be interested in somebody else and they just don't have time to fool with you. And one of the tools that I use to kind of break through that ice is force those things that they can't refuse. You know, your head coach scout, your assistant coach scout. Those letters, those phone calls, which really don't mean a whole hell of a lot of beans in the long run, but it gets your foot in the door, and you'll notice then they'll start accepting some of those visits that they can refuse. And the unfortunate thing is a lot of folks will sit there and continually try to send those campus visits or home visits, and they'll constantly be getting refused. All the while, the other school has already got their foot in the door, and anything they're doing with them, is just gravy at that point. And it's going to make it that much harder for you to break the ice later on. So, yeah, early and often, get in there and get that recruit, at least get your foot in the door, get into that guy's home, and make sure that, you're not waiting till a tail end where who knows how much extra it's going to cost you. But I believe it does. Guys, let's go ahead and hit the forum. Now, there's quite a few that we discuss from time to time on the boards, but we're going to bring those on here. And let's look at this first one. This is by CatsFang88. Are there any disadvantages to coaching an elite school? If so, what are they? Now, that one's been on the board for a couple, maybe even a week already. And there's some interesting thoughts from too much to none. Now, of the coaches here, how many elite coaches with experience are on? Oh, crap.
Definitely not me.
Virginia Tech's only an elite in my mind. Only in my mind.
They're an elite in my mind until they piss me off.
The only disadvantage to having an elite, in my opinion, would be to the coach himself, who has the elite mentality that they can go out and they're going to beat anybody just because they are an elite. And because if it's a new coach at an elite, it's not going to scare a lot of people off. It'll still push some off because some of them are too lazy to even look. They just see that it's Oklahoma or Texas. They don't even bother to look to see who the coach is. They just say, okay, I'll pass and go on to the next. But if you have decent coaches around them, they'll take a look, see who the coach is, and it won't bother them a bit to fight them. But I think, to me, the only disadvantage would be that the coach just thinks he's more than he is at an elite. Because, there is an advantage, but, a good coach at a neighboring school can, we've seen Nitro at Texas A&M, and he's stuck there between, he was stuck between Freeman and Blitz, and he did all right. But, it's got to be a coach who knows what he's doing and, has a good head on his shoulders to be that close to elites and still do all right, because that's one of the reasons I won't go to the Big Ten. I'm like, there ain't no way. You're sandwiched between Ohio State, Michigan, Notre Dame, and Penn State's in there with you, even though they're not pushing in recruiting or whatever. Yeah. And I was there for 4 seasons. I coached at Illinois many moons ago in Leahy, and it's just you let them take whoever they're taking, and then you grab some scraps. And I'd even have Nebraska to come, over and start taking recruits. I'm like, what the heck? We've got enough elites around here. Don't need Nebraska, feeding off the plate. But I would like to get to an elite just to do it, but at the same time, I don't care for 1A.
I would think that learning to not overthink your recruiting based on the fact that you're an elite. Because let's say that we three are recruiting against each other. I'm an elite and you guys aren't. Well, I'm going to win the recruit because I'm an elite. So I don't have to put the effort there that maybe I think I have to. And that's what I mean by overthinking. I think there was a post some time ago, and I can't remember who the coach was, but he ran trips. He only recruited one running back. He spent his money on his quarterback and his wide receivers. And he was always, I think he actually won a national championship in One World at some point, but he was always at like an off school, like Texas Tech or Texas A&M or somebody. He was never at the elite, but he was always like right in their neck of the woods. And he was always very successful, but he always had this very detailed plan for recruiting. I remember reading about how he handled that. And I would think you would have to be very cognizant of what those elites are doing around you and And if you're an elite, you just have to remember that you're not impervious to somebody coming and taking something away from you. People aren't necessarily going to roll over all the time.
Yeah, one of the things I learned, and I've had a couple different elites in different worlds all over the country, and without fail, the one thing I noticed is that first year, nobody gives a crap that you're an elite.
Yeah.
Because they have, really, they have money that you don't have, so they can equate your effort by just putting forth more effort. And for instance, with an elite, it may take, I'd say 5 or 6 home visits or campus visits to turn a guy green that is on Sims, and yet you go to another school with similar prestige, similar record, and for whatever reason in that particular area, it takes a little bit more. So I think the conference has something to do with that as well. What conference you're in, like the Big Ten, where you've got the mighty Penn State, Notre Dame, the big dogs, the Ohio States, that the recruits somehow or another want to gyrate toward those big conferences, those important looking conferences. So one of the things I learned early on is the first year as an elite, you just take what you can get and be thankful you got it. Save whatever money you can for the follow-on year to add to your bowl, and then you can start elbowing your way through some of these especially non-Power 5 conference schools. Now the disadvantage, that's more or less of a learning opportunity than it is a disadvantage. The disadvantage to me and for me was when I left an elite school and either dropped down for whatever reason to D1 AA or to a non-elite or even down to D2 or D3 to start over. After having been at that elite for several seasons, I had a built-in macho recruiting attitude. And it takes a couple seasons to shake that at that particular world. So, dropping down to D2, you start slinging elbows and you get 2x4s in the face. I mean, it's just, you just don't do that. So one of the disadvantages is, as an elite coach, you tend to get pampered by the fact that you do have an advantage. And it is a distinct advantage when it comes to recruiting. So the disadvantage, of course, when you drop out and go to another school, you've got to recenter yourself, reset your recruiting mind, and tackle the recruiting effort just like you did day one, as an elite. You just have to sit back and be thankful you can get what you get and not go in there with guns blazing thinking that you can do something. Sean, did you have a question on that topic?
No, I've obviously never been at an elite, so I can't comment on that. But I was reading that the board the other day, and I saw that question. There was one comment that I thought was interesting, which was, I think someone said something around the fact of the disadvantage is getting bored because you have the advantage, and if you're good at what you're doing, you can keep doing it for several seasons. And I guess if you're, I mean, at least me personally, not to say I would never want to be in the league, because I'd probably like to try it, but I love the thrill of competition and having to fight your way to the top, and so I guess so that was kind of an interesting comment to me. I forget who made it, but it was somebody said they kind of get bored sitting at the top at an elite. So
yeah, especially if you've been there and you've got the unknown amount of money to recruit with, and you've got your team set up to the way you can make it work. And now you've already cycled in, your 5th, 6th, 7th recruiting class and filled those slots with the players you want for your particular system. And you're not scheduling other elites, or you're not scheduling those Power 5 conference champions, year in and year out. And you're just, walking through the daisies just like you want to, because, you're not wanting the competition. You're just wanting the bravado of being an elite, which there are some coaches out there, but I won't hold them against it. Let's move on to the next question. Coleslaw 8 asks, is there any way to figure out which set of your selected formation is on the field using multiple sets and trips, which is which? And what he means by this, based on my interpretation, is let's say you've got trips on the field and you've got different sets of trips that you want to employ. How can you tell which is which? And one of the tools that I use in doing this is if I want to see a particular set's viability or effectiveness against a particular defense and I'm running trips, I will actually use a player that is in no way, shape, or form going to see the field under normal attrition through other players that are ahead of him, the starters getting exhausted and having to come out. So I'll insert, my let's say I'm running trips, for example, and I've got 7 wide receivers. Throughout the course of any game, I'm actively using 5 wide receivers, and on occasion the 6th one will get on the field. Well, if I want to know a particular set, I'll set it up in my formations and put a particular player like my 7th wide receiver in one of the optional wide receiver positions and incorporate that into the formation so that when the extended play-by-play is viewed, I can see him being on the field. Him specifically, he is on the field. So at that point, I know that particular play, that particular formation was the one that I was experimenting with. So then I can identify that those results. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
No.
Yeah, I don't know how else you would really do it, to be honest. I mean, that's about the only.
Unless you play the down and distance game where you only use it on certain down and distance.
Exactly. Yep. Or the other one is, for instance, your runs. If you're using, if you want to see who covers a particular wide receiver, depending on the quality of that wide receiver and the position he's in, you may insert a non-passing quarterback that would never ever see the field for that particular running play. And that way, when you look at your extended play-by-play, you can see, who's your quarterback for that play and know that that formation was selected by the computer for that particular play. But again, I don't know the value that you would gain by doing that enough to learn anything. So hopefully, that's answered his question, but I can't come up with any other way to do it. Like you said, Daryl, there's really no other way that I know of that you can identify what formation or what set of that formation is being played when.
Like I said, I don't know what the advantages would be of figuring that out. Cause unless you run it, you'd have to run it so much to get a true reading of what.
Yeah, exactly.
And then, basically, are you doing it because you're looking to exploit that against the team, or that's what I say. For what you would get out of it, it's too much work for me. So I've never done it. Wouldn't bother with it, but I guess.
Well, and like Shannon said, the down and distance, using it and manipulating those opportunities to where that anything less than 4 yards, you're going to be employing this particular set. Have you had any experience actually doing that, Shannon?
Yeah, I've done that several times. But I think going back to the comment that you were making, I'm curious to know how many times would you like to see a particular set before you feel confident, you have a high degree of confidence in what the outcome is going to be?
Exactly.
You want to see it 4 quarters? You want to see it 40 times? What's y'all's thoughts about that?
And mine would be, I've always been a firm believer in one play doesn't make it law.
No.
So
I wish,
yeah.
But no.
And as you said, 4 quarters. Well, what about 4 games? No 2 coaches scheme the same way. So what may work against you in, my data search on running a particular set may not work against Sean with his defense. It may be something totally different. So, not only 4 quarters, but do you do it for a season? Is this a long-term project where you're going to keep data, and then you've got to keep the data to include what defense you were playing against? And like Daryl said, that's just a lot of work for.
If you run it against Sims, Sims are not all created equal. They may run the same defense against you, but they're not all created equal. A 1-10 team does not have near the defense that, say, an 8-6 team, all things equal. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
The 1-10 team could have played all great teams and just gotten beat, but at the same time, all sims are not equal, so it's really hard to judge.
So one of the things I
Go ahead.
did this season in Rockney was
We don't care.
Is he talking? I can't hear him. What did he say?
I'm in total experimentation mode. So I've took a team in Rockney, and every time I play a sim, I set my second and third down. As long as I'm reasonably confident that I'm going to win the game, I set my second and third down to specific situations to plays, and I've kind of taken the Yahtzee game analyzing tool and put that all into a spreadsheet. So I have kind of a season's worth of, for every sim game, I can sit down and say, here's this play on 2nd and 10. I can't say that it's worked wonders for me yet, but it did kind of show me some high level statistics, and I can, to some degree, try. I think the hard part, like you said, is the variation in the defense. You don't know what the engine is doing. Are they putting two linebackers on the line, one on the line? But to some degree, you can figure out, like, all right, I'm playing a 4-3, and you see some trends. Like every time I send the tight end deep in this situation with the wide receiver short, he's got the free safety on him, or vice versa. So that at least gives me an idea. So when I'm playing a human and I want to isolate a free safety, or I want to do something like that, that's what I've been trying to do. I haven't gotten to the point where I can say that it's worked in my favor yet, but I'm learning. So
through time, using that Yahtzee tool will really benefit you to learn what it's telling you primarily, and not just glossing over it to see, where did I make the yards? Well, that's nice, but why did you make those yards? What was his defense? Did he blitz anybody? Did he have them all sitting back and you called an inside run? That's where that tool really comes in handy. And for those that don't use it, the extended play-by-play to some degree as well. Let's go ahead to this last question from the board. Let's see. There it is. Like the graphics there, it's pretty cool, ain't it? No, we're moving up in the world. A while back, D. Richard asked, how can you make the 3-4 effective against the run? Somebody please spill their beans on how this works, because I've run into 3-4 defenses that, at the end of the game, I'm looking at minus 12 yards total. And I'm like, how is this possible? All right, where's the answers coming from, guys? You're the vets. Let us know. Don't be shy.
Go ahead, Shannon. You run a 3-4?
I do. I wouldn't say I'm the best at it. I mean, if you really want to get this answer, you need to bleed Big Papa and Blitz is coming. Mm-hmm. But I can tell you that when you read the play-by-play, they have somebody blitzing every single play to stop the run. It doesn't always come from the same play. But, obviously going into your formation settings and adjusting the number of people that you have that are actually on the line of scrimmage is the easiest way to address it. So if you know that you're going to be playing a team like me, for example, that runs the wishbone in the world, and I happen to be running the football that year instead of throwing it, then if I were running a 3-4 against me, I would do what Big Papa does, which is I would put more people on the line of scrimmage. And that could mean that he puts 2 inside linebackers on the line of scrimmage. If I'm running the ball on the outside, he puts them on the outside position. Or if I'm running the ball inside, he moves them to the inside position. But he puts them on the line of scrimmage and doesn't let them be used in coverage. And that could be anywhere from 5 to 7 people on the line of scrimmage, depending on the down and distance. And that could also be coupled with somebody blitzing.
Exactly.
So we're talking about 8 people on the line of scrimmage. So now you're really looking at like a bear defense. They're basically challenging you to throw the ball, and good luck. You better be able to win if you throw the ball. And if you do throw the ball and you throw the ball to the right person at the right distance, then you're going to burn them. But you got to know where to throw it.
Yeah, I think one of the difficulties I have, and I primarily favor the 3-4 because of that. I just like being able to decide who's going to be that fourth lineman if I move a linebacker up onto the line of scrimmage, or 2, whichever the case may be. rather than, the standard 4-3. Sure, you can move a linebacker up, and now you got 5 people on the line, but you can, be victim to that dump off pass. Whereas with the 3-4, you still got 3 guys back there with a good solid lineman, defensive lineman covering the run. And if you've got a good, speedy and elusive linebacker, he can get in the backfield and cause some disruptions and disturbances. But overall, it's going to be trial and error, and you're going to have to recruit to an effective 3-4 defense. You'll have to get those guys whose job is nothing but to blitz, and you'll have to get those guys who have got the speed on the outside, particularly your defensive ends, because when you've only got that one monster sitting in the middle, and you've got 2 guys on the defensive ends that are slow as molasses, the corner is going to get turned on you before you know it. And all you've got out there is possibly a linebacker or a quarterback. And depending on how those 2 are, it could be a long day for you defensively. But if you get some stout interior defensive linemen that can sew up the center, and some quick and aggressive defensive ends, and you get some good savvy linebackers, the 3-4 can be effective against the run.
Yeah.
Daryl, do you do the 3-4 at all?
Yep, I do it. I do it probably 3/4 of my teams. I've got a few teams that I do 4-3, but yeah, 3-4 is what I run the most of. Like I say, and I agree with everything you said. I mean, as far as moving your players up or whatever. Also, a lot of people anymore. Nitros has touched it where everybody runs to the outside, try to wear the team down, then start throwing some medium passes and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So there's guys that'll you'll change out your cornerbacks for safeties. If they're running to the outside, somebody's got higher tackling or strength or something, so that way they can kind of help and run. You don't have somebody that's weak or anything like that out there. It's going to get pancaked, coming around the end. But
yeah,
I mean that's really about all I do as well. Just move linebackers up, and you just kind of use watch their game plan and see what their tendencies are, where they're going to run, and you just try and put more people where they're running and hope for the best.
Hope for the best. Yeah. Now, Kaz, on a previous show, Kaz was talking about a technique that he likes to employ when he's got 2. Let's say he needs 1 DB, and he's got 2 good ones that he can get. He'll grab one of them for the distinct purpose of moving him up to a linebacker and putting him on the outside, for the speed aspect, and doing the same thing, getting a good tackling linebacker and moving him into the D line to provide some additional strength there, especially if the guy's fast. He can put him as a defensive end on certain plays.
So speed up once you move him. I've had defensive linemen with 90 speed. So
yeah,
if you make that switch, I mean, you lose some of the strength and everything, but they'll gain it back over time. It may not get all the way back up, but yeah, I mean, you could have a super fast defensive lineman. I can't say that I've seen, oodles of sacks or anything like that, like you would think, a 90 speed defensive lineman would have. Yeah. You got to have the right kind of guy with athleticism and, still get some decent strength back in him, because it doesn't matter how fast
time, yeah.
If the guy's stronger than you, he's just going to hold you where you're at and got decent blocking. But I mean, you just play around some stuff and hope something falls in line.
Well, hopefully D. Richard's still around and tunes in to get that information. Guys, close it up here. Let's wrap it out. Let's go with Sean, parting words of wisdom.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Magic. It's been fun. It's been good listening to you guys about your wisdom. I'd say for all the newbies out there, keep at it. It's a journey, and I've definitely had a lot of struggles, and I'd say probably mostly in recruiting, but keep going and listen to shows like this. Listen to the Wilkinson show on Thursdays every season. I think it's twice a season now. There's a lot out there. I spend a lot of my time. I think Kaz might have said it on the last show, Magic. I go through the boards. I'm on page like 70 or something, just going back through the boards and trying to read through. And every once in a while, you get like you get one of those that long threads where Nitros will say something, and then
Take a picture.
Yeah, Pete.
Yes.
I take a picture every time Nitro says something. I take a picture.
Yeah.
This is Shannon at night. Hey, for my wife and kids and family, and God bless Nitros.
Tell me how to win this game, please.
He's got pictures and
I got to play him in a couple of weeks or a couple of days.
He's got pictures of Nitros posts hung up on the wall in his house.
I sleep with him.
Well, Sean, we appreciate you tuning in, brother, and don't be a stranger. You know you can pop back in. There's no invite needed. You just click that link in that first post of that pinned thread, and voila, you're here. Shannon, take us away with your thoughts.
Oh, wow. You're leaving the whole board open. I mean, I don't even know. I could ramble for hours. No, I just appreciate
All
the
right,
opportunity.
Daryl, how
I
about you?
apologize for a little.
I want to know what he's drinking.
I'm actually drinking Elmer T. Lee, if you know what Elmer T. Lee is.
No, I'm not familiar with that.
Bourbon.
Well, it ain't tea.
Bourbon.
I got
bourbon.
Knob Creek over here.
No, I appreciate the opportunity to be back on. Sorry for the technical difficulties at the beginning. I'll try to get back in the swing of things and try to pop in a little bit more frequently. So I do apologize. It's been a little bit crazy here at the house and everything's been going on, but it's about to calm out a little bit. So hopefully I'll be back.
All right, brother. Appreciate you having time to be with us. And like I said, you know, you guys are always invited. Daryl, your turn.
Everybody's as good a coach as I am. So, just like I said, hang around, read the forums, look around, ask questions. Most people on there will answer it. There's a couple idiots that come in and say something stupid, but for the most part, everybody tries to help out. And if you figure it out quicker than the rest of us, great. And if you don't, just keep plugging away. Like I said, sometimes you just back into a national championship. You never know.
Yeah.
Really? Oh!
I've done it a couple times.
One of these days, I'll back into one.
Hey, listen, this is an avenue for you to achieve that because you're getting all of the insights firsthand. You don't have to read it all, man. You're going to be telling everybody.
I am wisdom saturated to the point where I'm now dumb. And my record is showing it. It's steady going down since I started these shows. I don't know what the hell's going on.
It's like a
all right, guys.
swing.
Yeah, exactly. Playing around too much. Gentlemen, again, I can't tell you how much I appreciate y'all taking time out of your evening to be with us, and come back and join us some other time. Folks tuning in, appreciate you tuning in, and glad that you're a fan of this, that, and the other. Until next time, I'm your host, Magic. We'll see you again soon.
See.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.